Good evening, everyone. Hi, Vander. Hold on a second. Just getting our live started. Just 1 second here. Hi, good evening, everyone. Sorry, just having a little trouble with connecting here. All right, let's get started. Again, this is a continuation of the series. I already see that Bander's on the live. It's good to see you. So let's get going. So tonight, I'm going to be talking about basically being able to, check your credit report, how to go through your credit report, how to see what it says, and know exactly what details to look for. All right, so first thing I want to talk about is that most people check their credit reports but don't actually read the full credit report. Okay? So, when checking their credit report, it is reported that like 1 in 5 people find errors. Like a few people find a couple errors, but the question is, are people even checking those errors? So, let's talk about what's on the credit report and what we can exactly do to spot them, okay? How we can look at it. All right. So, the first thing that we want to definitely do when we get our credit report is that we want to get the three of them. Now, I mentioned before that there's more than one credit bureau. There's actually 3 credit bureaus that people use to get their credit reports. Okay? Those 3 hi Jaden, thank you for joining me. Those 3 credit bureaus are TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So with TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, you basically pull them. You can get your credit reports from annualcreditreport.com, or you can just call the credit bureaus and order your report and have them mailed to you. However you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is that you want to get all 3 of them. When you get all 3, you want to compare your credit reports. You want to compare them side by side. I always tell people, I say, listen, if you really want to clean up your credit, you want to see what it is, I would definitely do 3. I would definitely do the 3 credit reports. Again, I would line them up side by side. So once you get the credit reports, you basically want to check for the information on it. You want to make sure that it's actually your credit report. Now, the reason why I'm stressing that you should check that it's your credit report is because a lot of times when you don't check your credit report, there tends to be like a lot of errors on the credit reports. All right. There's a lot of errors. There are things that factual. Hence, this is why some people have bad credit, because they have a lot of things there where it's not even theirs. Okay. So now, once you get the credit report, you get all 3 credit reports, and I've always advised, line them up, do them side by side. You could even get you like a little highlighter, okay? And once you get you a highlighter, you could basically highlight each piece of information on your credit report. That's how you keep track of exactly what's on it. Now, the first part of the credit report that you're going to check your personal information. So, what's your personal information? Your personal information is your name, right? Your personal information is your address. It also shows where you work. That's exactly what your personal information is. Funny enough, many times people's information that's on there, it tends to be false. So for example, like let's say your name is John Smith. You might see on your credit report, you might see John Smithson. Or let's say you have a middle initial. Instead of it saying John C. Smith, it might say John B. Smith. Well, John B. Smith and John C. Smith are 2 different things. So you want to make sure, or you want to ensure that this is actually the right credit. Your right name is on your credit report. It's the right thing. After checking your name on your credit report, you want to ensure that your address is right. Now, let's take a minute and talk about the addresses. Some of the addresses on your credit report, some of them could be places that you lived before, and some of the addresses could be places that you've never even seen or heard of before. So this is where when you have the 3 credit reports and you're checking to see what's on there in terms of address, you see if the addresses are actual factual, or are they really addresses that you know? Because in the age that we live in, identity theft can happen, and somebody could have used your name at an address where you had no idea where it came from before. So you want to check the address. Now, once you check the address, right? Once you check that address on your credit report, if you find that there's any inaccuracies or the addresses are wrong that are on there, this is where you're going to get ready to start disputing these things on the credit report. Now, a lot of people get their credit reports and they get it and they read it, and many times there's wrong information on it. Instead of people checking it, people just leave it, and those things continue your credit report. You have to literally sit there and analyze it and see exactly what's on the report. So, for example, if you check and the address is wrong, you're going to dispute it with the bureaus. You're going to actually write them. And on the next slide, hi, Gabriel. Thank you so much for joining. We're talking about checking our credit reports and making sure that the information. So what we're doing on tonight's live is that we're breaking the credit report down piece by piece. We're talking about each section of the credit report. So the first section that I'm talking about is the personal information, such as your name, your address, your employer, that actually talks about you. So once you check that, if you check and you see that those addresses aren't right, you're going to dispute. And on the next slide, we're going to talk about how to actually dispute with the credit bureaus. All right, so we've done our name. We've checked that our name is right. And again, if the name isn't right, we're going to dispute it. We're going to easily provide information to the bureaus to get it corrected. We've checked our addresses. Now, a lot of credit reports always have the places where you work. They always put your employers. So, for example, if you check and an employer that's on your credit report, if it's not accurate, same thing. You're gonna dispute it. Sometimes you might even see an employer or a place that you have never worked before. Okay, you don't want those things on your credit report either, because it could give you basically wrong records. It could be something that's written wrong about you. You don't want to keep those in your credit report. So it's the same way if your name is incorrect or your address or your employer, you're going to get those things corrected. You're going to dispute. And all it really takes is just a simple letter of writing to the credit bureaus. You don't really need to, you don't need to send any snail mail. You just have to literally get in touch with them. They'll have it removed and updated once they could verify that it's you. So that's not even a problem. All right. Before we go on, has anybody ever pulled their credit report before and seen any misinformation on it, such as their name, address, or employer? Has anybody ever witnessed that before on their credit report? Okay, I guess not. But when I pull my credit report in the past, I've seen many different errors, and I've easily had it corrected and fixed, because again, I don't want anybody putting any not factual or unfair credit reporting on my profile. It's very important that you get those things updated. So now that you've checked your credit and the personal information is updated, right? Or you want to get the personal information updated, let's look at the actual things that are written on the credit report, the actual accounts that are being reported on the credit report. So the actual reports that are being reported on the credit report, sometimes it could be your regular old collections, and collections result from you having, not paying certain bills. So after a while, the bank writes it off as collections. This is after the account charge is off. It turns into a collection, or it could just be where they sell the debt. And the thing about collections is that a collection could be where you have it with a certain company, and once that company basically writes it off, they sell the debt. They could sell it to somebody else. Then it's placed on your credit report as a collection, and collections sit there. These things sit there for up to 7 years. I talked about something called the statute of limitations, where they can only have a debt on your credit report for a certain amount of time. But realistically, if something's on your credit report, or if there's an error, or even if it's actually factual on your credit report, you don't want to have something on your credit report for 7 years. That's a long time. That's a long time of waiting to try to buy something. Okay, it's a long time. You don't want it to be there so long. Once it's there so long, it's really hard for you to qualify for things. So this is why we have to get those collections or those things removed off your credit report. All right. The next thing that we want to actually check for, we want to look if we have any bankruptcies. Okay. Bankruptcies are what people file when they're in financial debt, and it's a way for basically clear off and wipe off the slates. Bankruptcies, although people have their bankruptcies, it's not something that lenders would like to see that you filed a bankruptcy before. So again, you want to check if any bankruptcies are listed on your credit report. I mean, if you had to file bankruptcy and it's actually you, then you can't really take that off. Because one thing about credit disputing is that you don't, it's basically you can't dispute things that are actually accurate. The point of me talking about this on the live is that I'm telling you that you actually have to dispute things that are inaccurate or things that are fake. Okay. For example, again, back to the addresses. If you see that the address that they have listed for you is inaccurate, that's an easy fix. If you see that they have an address on there that you've never lived there before, you've never heard of that place, never had a lease or a mortgage there, never had any residency there, then of course you're going to dispute that. But if you have things on your credit report that are actually factual, then that doesn't make any sense for you to try to dispute something like that. It's not going to work. Okay. When we talk about checking our reports and disputing and looking for errors, we're actually talking about errors. We're not talking about things that you legitimately paid for, or things that you legitimately have on your report that are true and you're trying to get them off. That's not going to work. You have to dispute things that are actually false or erroneous on your credit report. All right, so you've checked for collections, you've checked for bankruptcies. You're also going to check for any judgments. And judgments, again, are what lenders get against you if you owe a debt. Let's say a lender decides to sue you, you didn't go to court. The judgment is basically what the lender won against you because you never showed up in the court. So as a result, you end up with, having that judgment on your credit report. Now, there's times that, again, it could be a wrong judgment put on there. And if it really is inaccurate or it's wrong, this is where you're going to dispute it. Because the beauty about analyzing your credit report is that you're able to fix things or look at things and, basically get those records removed if they're actually inaccurate. Not because you have a bad credit report now doesn't mean that you have to keep that credit report bad forever. There's no such thing. That's the one good thing about credit. You can always fix your credit. It doesn't mean because it's on there, it has to sit on there forever. There's just no way. Now, let me ask you, has anybody had an opportunity where they needed to fix their credit, or they use their credit report, they analyze their credit report? Has anyone ever done that before? Analyzing their credit report? Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. So I've looked at mine several times and I've had things that I've had to fix. So it's not a bad thing to analyze or try to fix your credit report. It actually makes sense. Again, the credit bureaus are there. Many times people pay people to fix their credit report. And I've always advised it's something that you could do yourself. But, actually disputing and fixing, that's a different life in itself. So we'll touch more on that. But I'm just giving you some tips and pointers. Once you're checking your credit report, there are things that you can easily fix on the credit report. You don't have to leave the credit report the way it is. You don't have to keep it the way it is. It doesn't really matter. You can always fix it, okay? All right. I also pointed out, okay, Anthony, thank you so much for joining. Anthony says that I've tried on my own, but without legal help, they won't do much. Well, that's actually a good point. Thank you for joining us, Anthony. I'll be honest with you, disputing and fixing credit, it's a lot of work. You'll have a lot of companies, or a lot of places, even law firms that'll come and say, we can fix your credit. It takes time, because the reason why it takes time to fix those disputes is that you have to keep going back and forth with the credit bureaus. Okay. Exactly. Depends on what proof you have and so forth. And it also goes to the statute of limitations. But a lot of times, even when, like, let's say, for example, you get a collection, I'm just throwing something out there. Let's say you get a collection, right, on your credit report, and they might say, okay, dispute the debt. Sometimes you'll send a letter disputing the debt, and the moment that they reject it or whatever, like, a lot of people just give up and they're like, oh, they're not going to take it off. No, sometimes that debt is not even owned by the original company, wherever the account charged off or messed up on. Okay, it's owed to another company, another collection. Okay, another company bought that collection. They bought that debt. Now, that is something that you can easily get rid of, because, first of all, whatever the debt was, whatever company that owns the debt now, you never had any transactions with that company. So somebody that never originally had a debt, they can't ask you to pay a debt that they never originally had. Okay? They can't do that because you had no financial relationship with that person. But again, that's a, again, that's a different live of how to actually clean up the credit, like in detail. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be having basically a workshop, very simple, very minimal cost, where we're going to get on it and we're going to like learn how to clean up our credit on our own. Very minimal, very minimal, just a small contribution to, to help me to get everything together to help people clean up their credit. But yes, you're 100% right. Sometimes people resort to where they have to hire legal help, but it's just a matter of sending in the right letters with the proof. And it takes a little bit of time to do it. It's not something that can happen overnight or it's the next day instantly. That's another thing with these companies that, that claim to clean up credit. They'll tell you, oh, we can have everything wiped off immediately. No, that is not true. You can't get everything wiped off immediately. It takes time. Credit disputing. Once you check that credit report and you see that credit disputing is basically going back and forward, you got to send a few letters out. Like you said, you got to provide proof. It takes work. And even on this YouTube channel, the other day I released a video and I talked about, ways to clean up your credit. And I said on that video, and I also have a short, and I can't even link it now as I'm doing this live, but if you get a chance later, if you go back and look on the channel, you'll see literally where I talk about, fixing credit and how to do it, 3 ways that you could basically like get your credit score up, what to do. I tell people in my videos, I said, it's not something that's overnight. It's a process. The same way the credit bureau takes at least 30 days to report how you're doing and report whatever's clean or whatever comes off your credit. That's the same way it's going to take you time to clean it up. Okay? Exactly, Anthony. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for validating that. Anthony said that I've been able to get collections off the way you are explaining. Once they transfer it, it becomes easier. In my opinion, it's actually wonderful when they transfer it because whoever they transfer it to, you know that you never had any relationship with them. If you owe XYZ Bank and XYZ Bank decides to sell it to ABC Bank, that is not your problem. That is not your problem. You didn't have any relationship. So yes, you do know that when I'm saying that they do take it off. And again, depending on what you're disputing on your credit, disputing a collection or disputing a judgment or even like what do you call it, like a bankruptcy or things like those, they're all different levels. The way you can easily get a collection off of your credit report is not going to be the same way that you could get like a bankruptcy or even like a judgment off. And realistically, there's some things that you just cannot get off your credit. You just got to hope and pray that it's an old debt and it has expired. Okay. Certain things that you can't get off. People say you can't get off things like student loans because that's the government. You can never get rid of those. But when I'm talking about like disputing and credit and cleaning up, I'm talking about like average, regular, everyday collections, like such as a credit card, medical debt, or if somebody, had like a regular loan, like a repossession, stuff like those. Those are things that you can possibly, yes, if you take the time and the steps, you can get those things off of your credit. And it is such a cliche statement where people are like, oh, I could clean this up, or I clean my credit up here and there. It takes time. It takes time. If you're not going to invest the time, it's not going to happen. So many people sit there and they'll pay a place $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 when you could do it yourself. As I said, I'm going to be doing a workshop, and with the workshop, I'm going to be literally having a workshop. How do we start cleaning our credit up for a very nominal fee? Okay, so I'll basically post. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll post it in my community when I'm having it. I'm also on the Instagram at Team U Finance, so you can easily find me when I'm going to be having that workshop. Credit is something that should not stop us from getting what we need. As I said before, and I said it in my live last night, that credit is a tool. It's a wonderful tool, but you have to know how to utilize that tool. If you don't know how to use that tool, it's going to basically, it's going to be an enemy for you. It's going to be a financial enemy. So we don't want that. We want to always check our credit reports. All right, so let me just jump back into this. Anthony, thank you so much. That's actually a wonderful point, that you can dispute and you can get things off. And yes, certain things are easier to get off. That was what we kind of segued into, but everything else takes time. So I've touched on getting the personal information off. I've touched on the public records. I've talking about, getting the judgments off and so forth. Right. Thank you, Bander. Yes, I appreciate the likes. I've talked about that. Now, let's actually dive into the section that has the accounts. Now, when you look on a credit report, and again, how do I always say to get your credit report? I know we live in a digital age. I know everything is online. I get it 100%. I'm online every day. But there are just some things that you have to do the regular old-fashioned way. So once I know that I have my three reports, right? I got my three reports from TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, right? And I'm looking at the account section. Have you ever seen when you get your credit report, they'll have like these little like rectangle boxes. And the little rectangle boxes, like, they kind of look like something like this, the little rectangle boxes. And in there, you'll see at the top, you'll see the numbers, you'll see like 30, you'll see 60, you'll see 90, and you'll see the dates, the months. And you see like the check marks, and it shows actually when you paid, whether you were 30 days late, you were 60 days late, you were 90 days late, or 120 days late, or I think, 180? That's when they start to do charge-offs. They'll show you those things, okay? Those are the actual accounts that shows your payment history. It shows how you paid. So what I touched on yesterday, and again, I'm going to bring it back again. We talked about what makes up your total credit profile to 100%. And I said that the payment history was actually 35%. That was what the payment history is. So once you have the payment history and you look at it and you see whatever, let's say you have an account with, John Smith Company, and you see how you paid. It tells you exactly, let's say January 2024, it shows how you paid, February 2025. Okay. Now let's move on. And we're in 2025 right now. And let's say after analyzing your credit report, you notice that maybe back in 24, it said that maybe in August 2024, you were 30 days late. You know that you were not late for that account. You know that you paid everything on time. So again, it's a simple fix. You just have to literally dispute the bureaus like that. And I tell people all the time, I know, again, and I sound like a robot saying it, I know it's a digital age. I tell people, I said, stop disputing these things online. I don't understand. If you can sit there on your phone for hours, why can't you literally sit and go to the post office and send a regular snail mail letter out? And that is one of the secrets to disputing proper credit. When you check your payment history, when you check that report, when you break that report, then you look at your payment history, you look at your balances, you look at your history, how you paid, you look at how they listed that you're paid, because again, it's a machine. They make mistakes too. I also mentioned that sometimes, like, let's say, for example, they have you listed as paying something 60 days late, when in reality, it wasn't 60 days, probably you were 30 days late. You need to get that corrected. And all it is just simply writing a letter to the credit bureaus and getting that corrected and change on it. Now, some people might say, okay, with the letters, I don't know how to write. This is why I pay somebody to do it for me. That's fine. You don't need to learn how to write a perfect statement, how to do something perfect. All you have to do is just basically follow the format. And again, they have letters that you could follow the format. For each account, you're going to personalize it, because you might have a different balance with one place, or you had a different balance or a different reporting with another company. So you basically personalize those reports. Okay, that's exactly how that works. All right. So now, after checking our balances, so we've checked our lates, or the time that we actually paid. We checked our payment histories, right? We checked the balances. All right. Let's talk about, for example, when you have a wrong balance on it. Let's say you had an account that, that literally charged off. It charged off at $1,000. Now your credit report, all three, you have one that's listing it at $1,000. You have one that's listing it at $1,200. You have one that's listing it at $50. Whatever it is that you paid for that account, you have to, again, line up the letters, make it accurate, and see exactly what you paid for it. Okay. Once you check, you're going to dispute, you're going to send it into the credit bureaus because again, it's not reporting the proper balance that account either charge off or what you had to pay for. So of course, that's what you're going to have to dispute. So checking your balances on reports is good. Another thing is that one balance that might be on one credit report is a different balance on another report. So this is why we have to check. And I've even seen that in my own personal credit report. I'll see something A on this credit report, and then I'll see B on this, and I see C on another one. We all need to be the same variable. Okay? It needs to be the same variable. It needs to be the same thing on every single report. Okay? It needs to be the same thing on every report. So this is where you're going to actually check for inaccuracies. And now, okay, right. Somebody just asked a question. They said, how often are you checking reports? You're checking your reports. They say like once a year. Hence, they have something called annualcreditreport.com. But I mean, I check my credit report a few times. Now, with the beautiful age of technology, if you sign up for a Credit Karma account, you could literally see what's on that report. You could see what's on your account. You can literally see what's on the account. So, but I always advise, even though we have stuff like Credit Karma and also, you know, I think Experian has a thing where they'll give you a credit report. A lot of these credit card companies too, if you sign up and you get credit with them, they'll have an app or have something where you can easily download and look at your report all the time. They give you like regular daily reporting because I don't think a lot of people realize how important and how much credit is used. A lot of people don't. So because a lot of people don't, you know, sometimes, like I said, just checking your credit report, it literally goes over your head. You're like, oh, I'll check next year. The only time that we really like check our credit report is when we're trying to buy things. I always mention if we're trying to buy that new car, we're trying to buy that house. And remember, the lenders, the people that you borrow money from, they always check. They'll check. Did you know that even sometimes when you have a credit card, and if you have a credit card, you know that periodically, I don't know exactly how many days, lenders or banks, they tend to like run your credit every once in a while. They do something called a soft pull. So it doesn't affect your tank, your score, make your score go down. And they look at how you've been spending your money. If when they pull your credit report and they see that you've been spending your money somewhat decent and your score has been revolving, you've been paying your balances, sometimes you magically get a letter. You don't even know what it is. And they'll say that they've increased your credit limit. The reason is because they've already looked without you asking them for a credit increase. They've already looked and said that you've been managing your money. So because you've been managing your money, these people have literally, or these banks have literally give you an increase. It could also go the opposite way, where when they do a soft pull and they check the account that you've been revolving with them, if they see that you have other balances and you haven't been paying well and your credit score has gone down, they will basically either cut the limit that they've given you or they'll even close the card. That's it. So this is the reason why it's important that you as a consumer, you have to check your credit report. You need to definitely check it. You need to make sure that what you have on your credit report is accurate. Because if it's not accurate, right, you can't really, you know, do the things that you need to do. This one you have to basically dispute and get it fixed. Bander says that billionaires and millionaires, right, they like their credit. Of course. Well, that's why they're billionaires and millionaires, because those people, you know, made their millions and their billions off of having good credit. Those people, you know, those rich people, they're not using, I mean, they have their cash, but they're not using their hard-earned cash. They use their credit to fund the things that they want to do. This is the reason why I emphasize that people need to have such, you know, good credit. It makes sense. This is the reason why people need to have good credit, because when people have good credit, they could buy everything they want to buy. You know, a lot we talk about on this channel, we also talk about investing and all those things. With good credit, you can invest as much as you want. You can do whatever you want to do with good credit. Okay? All right. So another thing that you need to check after checking your balances, after checking, you know, if there's any duplicate accounts or wrong accounts, you need to check and see if there's any signs of identity theft. That is a big deal on your credit report. Remember when I started the live, I was talking about like checking your name and your address? Right. Let's say you checked your name and your address and you see a different name. Like I said, maybe your name is John C. Smith and you see John B. Smith or John A. Smith. If you're John C. Smith, there's no reason why John A. or A or C should be on your report. Okay? The reason is because it could have been a case of identity theft. So this is why you have to actually look at that information. And again, I'm not going to tell you it's easy to correct identity theft. I've never been a victim of it, thank God. But for people that have, I'm sure it took a little while for them to do it. But I think a lot of these things could be prevented if people were actually getting their credit reports and checking their credit report. A lot of people only check their credit report when they're shopping. They're not getting their free credit reports. Now, most times with the credit reports, if you want like an accurate score, I'm not talking about like, the online score, I'm talking about like an accurate score. If you order your credit report with like snail mail, that will be able to tell you exactly what your real credit score is. And again, I urge you to get them from the 3. Get it from the 3 Bureau. They're going to ask you if you want to do any like accurate report. If you want to keep, getting reports each month, they'll charge you like a nominal fee. If you're trying to buy something, you want to see how your credit is acting, you can look, you can check. It doesn't hurt you to check your credit score all the time. It's actually a wonderful thing to check your credit score. All right. So, what else did I talk about? Okay, I talked about identity theft. All right. We talked about identity theft and so forth. Now, I also want to point out that there are things or there are places that, that you could basically call and lock and freeze your report. You can do it. I know you could literally call the credit bureaus and you can ask them to lock your account. So that way, people won't be able to use your name for anything. What a lot of people have done in the past is they'll basically lock their credit profiles. It's easy. If you fear that somebody's using your credit profile or they're trying to, take things out in your name, once you lock your account, they can't apply for anything in your name. And I've had cases where, like, let's say, for example, like the account is locked. What will simply happen is that let's say you lock your account and you apply for credit. Nobody is going to, no bank. Okay, let's say you lock your credit profile. Let me explain this the best way I can. Let's say you call TransUnion. I'm just throwing one of them out there, and you lock your credit profile. You go in a store and you're trying to apply for something. You're just applying for a regular store card. That store card is not going to be able to go through. Like, even if you're approved for it based on your good credit, they can't do it. The credit, you have to basically unlock or unfreeze your credit profile. And many times people lock or freeze their credit profile so people can't do identity theft. Now, for people that have bad credit, and if somebody's trying to do identity theft, I mean, it's obviously a waste of time because they can't get approved for anything. I mean, identity theft happens with like people that have great credit scores. Unfortunately, people open, false or erroneous accounts in their names. Okay, fraudulent accounts. Right. But we're not really focusing on identity theft. How identity theft came up is because we're saying that we should look at every single one of the items on our credit reports so we can know what is being reported accurately, whether it's true or it's not. That's exactly what we need to do. All right. So now, after checking all of those things, checking the accounts, checking, it says after checking all of the accounts and seeing exactly what's on the accounts, we need to talk about, how our whole credit profile ties into stuff. So let's talk again about the payment history. This is the one that I really want to focus on. A lot of times the payment history kind of goes over our head because with the payment history going over our head, we don't really check the history until like later. We don't do it. Okay, we don't check the history till later. We only check the history when we're trying to buy something and we find that something bad is on the report. And as a result, we end up, if we go through the purchase, we end up getting bad rates. Okay, we end up getting bad rates. So with the bad rates that we get, we end up purchasing a product that is going to cost us more in the long run. That is the point of checking your credit report. You're checking your credit report because you want to fix or you want to correct the errors. You want to fix the things that are inaccurate on the credit report. Okay? You want to fix the things that are false, that are not true. It's like, why would you want to keep something on your report that's obviously false or is not going to allow you to purchase the things that you want to purchase? Now, the big question that people always ask, and people always say, okay, well, how long does it take for me to fix the report? Um, it takes a little while. It takes a while. Okay? It takes a while. I know sometimes, probably looking at the report, you're probably like, okay, like maybe you feel a little overwhelmed, especially when you see the part that says, that discharged off, or it says this one was 30 or 60 days late and so forth. Right. The only reason why a lot of people end up having bad credit or their credit is bad because maybe when they were having problems with their debt, they never knew how to contact the lender and, try to get a grace period. They just let the debt linger on. They figure that, you know what, I'm just gonna let it sit there. I'm not gonna challenge, it's gonna eventually go away. Bad credit is not something that goes away right away. It's not something that just magically goes away. You have to basically pursue it. It's like you gotta sit, you gotta do it, step by step. You have to sit there, you got to clean it up. You have to start writing stuff. If you don't, then no bank is going to clean anything up for you. You have to do it yourself. A lot of people get tired and frustrated. They say, okay, you know what, let me just hire somebody to do it for me. Question is, are they going to even do it? Are they going to clean it up? Right, right. Nobody's going to actually clean it up for you. Okay. So after getting our credit report and checking, the errors, and if we find anything on our credit report that doesn't make sense, you know, what do you think that we need to do? If we see anything that is fake or that's wrong, and when I say fake, I mean, literally like having a different name from what your name is. Obviously, that's a fake profile. So if you see something on your credit report and it's not accurate, like what do you think you need to do? Or what should you do? Okay. Who is it? John said that you need to dispute it. Of course, you have to dispute it. You have to dispute it. And this is what I was emphasizing, that you have to actually like take the time out to sit and do it. Now, a lot of people don't want to take the time out. What they want to do is they, like I said, a lot of people tend to, pay somebody, have somebody do it for them. They want it to be done professionally. But as I always say, the same thing that you pay somebody to do, you could do it yourself. You make it more personable, and it takes a little while, but you can still get results. Now, how to actually dispute the letters, that again, that's a different live in itself. It's a different live, it's a different way. It's not exactly just saying to the credit bureaus, hey, can you take this off my credit report? Then if it was that easy, then nobody would have bad credit, right? But in life, everything takes time. Whether it's a credit report, anything that you're doing. Just as it took a while for them to put them errors on it, it's going to take a while for you to clean it off. It's going to take a while for you to clean it off. Right. So you can't just expect that it's going to magically disappear. It's not going to magically disappear. And I'll tell you something funny. As much as it might sound weird, it's actually fun to clean your credit up. It's fun to look at your credit report because many times, it just takes literally a pen and a paper to get these things corrected. But again, you're going to have to want to put the work in. You're going to have to want to put it in. You're going to have to want to actually write them and follow up with them. I always tell people when they're cleaning up credit, I always say, other than having, your composition book and your notebook and keeping track of who you paid off and who you disputed, have like a little, notebook or a little binder of the letters that you send and notate how to do it on the binders. Notate exactly what you sent to someone. What did you do with this person? What did you send to this bank? So that way you can keep track of who you wrote and who you disputed it with. Because credit credit cleaning up your credit after checking your credit report, it can be a lot of strenuous work. It's a lot. But you will get results. You definitely get results. If you don't get the results that you're looking for the first time, there's no rule or no law that says that you can't write the credit bureau and dispute it again. And this is why I emphasize that you need to literally get the report. And once you get the report, you could see exactly what's on the report. You get to see exactly what they have written about you. Many times these things are not real, or they're collections that have been sold before. And once those things are sold, it's up to you to get it corrected. You can't just sit there and let it just stay on there forever. Now, after reading our reports and getting our reports, let's talk about some of the things that we can do once we get our reports cleaned up. So, if you're in a crunch, let's say you're in a crunch to buy something, and I talk about this all the time. Let's say you're in a crunch to buy a home, and you pull your credit report and you see that something is wrong on your credit report. Now, you've been working, you're trying to qualify for that mortgage or for that loan, and you got to get those things off. You got to send the other set of dispute letters to get those things off the credit report. If it's actually a true collection and you owe somebody and so forth, all you really have to do is just maybe, settle with the company. And many times what people end up doing is, let's say the debt that's on your credit report or the collections that are on there, whatever it is, that if you actually owe it, all you have to do is basically, you could ask the company. You can make a payment arrangement with the company. If you make a payment arrangement with the company, maybe if you could pay for a pay to delete. Right. Listen, companies want their monies. They don't care. There's been instances where people have done paid for deletes. You could settle that with them and say, okay, hey, if I pay this much, can you delete this off my profile? Right. Yes, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money, or, you have to actually pay the debt if you owe the debt. But I think it's easier to start with a clean slate where the debt is deleted off your credit report. Because the less debt you have, or the less collections or charge-offs that you have, it's the better it looks to the lender, the person that's trying to qualify you for credit. So you want to try to get everything off as quick as possible. Get everything cleaned up, right? Get everything cleaned up as quick as possible. Because if not, you're not going to be able to move forward and buy anything. Okay, I have time for questions. Okay, Tony says, how long does it take to actually clean? What? You said, how long does it take to actually clean it up, your report? There is no set time of how long it takes. I mean, we're not talking years. We're not talking years and months. Realistically, just like how they take 30 days to report how good you're doing or how you're paying your bills, it depends how many rounds of disputes that you do with the credit bureau. If you have a collection and maybe you have a collection and it's not your collection and you decide to dispute it, and you write to the credit bureau, you send a letter in, maybe the first time you can get that collection removed. It might take you 15 days. It might take you 30 days to get it removed. Now, if you have something on there, let's say you have an old debt, you have a debt that's been on there for like 1-2 years and so forth, it's going to take a while. If it is not your debt, they're going to have to investigate. And that's why I always urge people to do this with snail mail. That's why I urge people to do their credit disputing, trying to fix those errors on the credit report with regular snail mail. You see, when you dispute, they encourage you to go online to do digital because they say digital is easier and is quicker. And I also made it a point in one of my videos on this channel. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. Get a moment. Check out some of the videos on the channel that talk about credit and cleaning up. What ends up happening is that when you when you try to clean a credit up the digital way, yes, I mean, it can work where they could check it. But I think it's just like an electronic system and it just gets pushed through literally. So you might let's say, for example, you might send a dispute to a credit company, a credit card company, like 5 o'clock in the evening. And by the time you check your email tomorrow morning at like 7 o'clock, they said that they've already solved and checked the case. Honestly, they have up to 30 days, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, right, to check. If you submit something tonight, how could they have checked it so quick by the next morning? Right. So that's what I'm saying. That's why you have to literally send it in and let them exercise those 30 days because they have to literally write you back. It gives them enough time to accurately investigate rather than just using a digital system. Me personally, I'd rather wait 30 days and get something removed or, updated. For example, let's say the report that you were 180 days late when in reality you was only 30 days late. I'd rather wait 30 days to have my I'd rather wait 30 days to have my payment history updated than have my payment history not updated literally within one night. It makes a difference. Always need my water. It makes a difference when your payment history is updated. Right. So if, saying how long it takes, um, it depends on how big or how severe the collection is, or the balances or the judgment or whatever's on there. It depends on how much letters and how much disputing you have to do, how much rounds, they call them rounds. It depends how much rounds you have to do to dispute a negative or an inaccurate item on your credit report. And again, we only dispute negative, we only dispute inaccurate, fake items on our credit report. We can't dispute or remove things that are actually accurate. You cannot do that. But you can only dispute things that are inaccurate or negative or basically not true. Because again, you don't want to waste your time disputing things that was definitely you. I mean, it's not going to work. You can't do that. You can't go around the system. When we talk about cleaning up our credit, we talk about cleaning up things that are inaccurately, falsely reported. We're not talking about things that are actually true, that that you bought and didn't pay for. Like, you can't do that. You have to actually dispute things that are fake or that are not real. That's when the disputes work. Because you have to understand, let's say, for example, somebody puts, let's say a company or a bank puts something on your credit report that's fake or that's not true, or something that you paid off and they sent it anyway. Things happen, things get lost, whatever, in the shuffle. If they do that and a couple years have passed, remember, when you dispute, you're going to write back the credit bureau and you're going to ask them to basically provide proof that it's you. It's like when you dispute a collection initially, right? You ask that company to provide proof of the debt within a certain amount of time. You're asking them to provide proof of that debt. Well, if you're disputing something that on your credit report that is not real, or it's fake, it's not you, not that it's not real, but it's fake, it's not you, it's false. They have to basically produce and show you where they got those things from. If it's fake, if it really isn't you, they're not going to find it, right? So as a result, those things are going to get removed off your credit report. Now, let's say you do have debt or things on your credit report that's actually you. You might be able to get those things off depending on the years or the statute of limitations. Does anybody remember how many years a debt stays on your credit report for? Does anybody remember? I mentioned that a few times. Let's see who's actually paying attention and listening. Does anybody know how long the credit report stays on? How long do they report a debt or any type of adverse accounts on your report? Does anybody know? Okay. Okay. David said that like more than 5 years. It's actually 7. Stays on there for 7 years. 7 years. And after all, because there's been so many people that have seen reports or they're seeing accounts that have been on their credit report that are more than 7 years old. That is absolutely ridiculous. If you see a report on your credit, right, if you see, a collection, any type of account that's more than 7 years old, that is so easy to get that off, because all you have to do is just write the credit bureau. I mean, they remove it. If you notice, it drops off after a while. So if it's sitting there on your credit report and it's not moving or it hasn't changed, and for sure that you have to keep disputing it. But it's called the statute of limitations. After a certain times, after 7 years, those debts go off or they fall off. But as I've said many a times, we can't wait for 7 years when we want to buy something. If I'm in the market to buy a car, hi Bander, thank you so much. If I'm in the market to buy a car, I can't wait 7 years. So this is why, if there's false information on my credit report, I have to accurately dispute those types of information on there. Right. I have to dispute it. Okay. This is what we have to do. All right. I have another. Okay. Bander says that they could do Bitcoin ATM at the income line. Right. Now I'm asking you, Bander, I don't really know. Do you need credit to buy Bitcoin and all those things? I don't really know about Bitcoin, to be quite honest. I'm really into the, hard cash. I mean, I know it's the wave to go, and it's a future right now, but I don't really know. Does credit, if credit plays any any role in people buying stuff like Bitcoin. I don't know. I'm just really focusing on cleaning up the credit. I'm focusing on cleaning up our credit report, and I'm focusing on like literally reading our credit report. Okay, you're talking about selling it, not buying it. Right, right, right. That's another thing. Okay, okay, that's good. That's excellent. Everybody's in the market of buying and selling, right? Exactly where the money is. That's where people are. That's actually wonderful. So the takeaway from today's live is that people need to. All right. Okay, Mander says we can buy a Bitcoin ATM and get it at 2%. Okay, that's good. As I said, I don't really know about a lot about Bitcoin. I mean, I've heard of it, I know about it, but it seems to be the way, right? It seems to be the way. The other day, somebody was telling me about something called a crypto wallet. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about that at all. I mean, I can't report on what I don't know. But what I was saying is the takeaway for today's live is that we really need to start checking our credit reports. We have to. And the only reason why I'm even saying that it's so important is like right now, the way the economy is and the way everything is going, it's going to be a good time to start investing and buying real estate. It really is. I'm big on that. And everybody knows that in order for you to properly get into the real estate game and to buy real estate, you have to have good credit. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, whether you are a second-time home buyer, whether you are an investor, it doesn't matter what it is. You need to have credit. Okay, if you don't want to go in the game of real estate, anything you want to buy, if you want to rent an apartment, landlords check your credit profile. They check to see what's on it. They check for your payment history. They check to see if you have any collections. They check to see if you have any judgments. If you're renting an apartment, a landlord is going to basically check to see if you've ever been evicted anywhere. Okay? Now, there's been times where people have rented apartments and they have moved out, and whatever had happened with them and the landlord, God forbid, things get listed wrong on their credit reports. Okay? So if you have anything, once you check your credit report, if you have anything that's inaccurate or it doesn't add up or it's not making any sense, then you need to basically get it removed. You need to work on getting it removed. Because if you don't, it's going to sit there. The longer those, other than when something falls off based on the statute of limitations, the longer those things stay on your credit report is the longer and harder it is for you to get it off. And forget about even getting it off. It's stopping you from buying anything. It's stopping you from buying the things that you really need to buy. So if you don't want to sit there all the time and not being able to buy the things that you really want to buy because you have bad credit or your credit is low, why not just simply, get those things fixed? So I would advise anybody, I know they say do it once a year, but I would advise check your credit report. If you want to make it be a thing where you can sign up with those things, you could, as I said, I know Experian has a program. I know the famous Credit Karma has a program. A lot of banks, if you join them or if you have credit cards with them, they offer credit monitoring and so forth. And I also wanted to touch on one thing. When you actually check your credit report and you see what's on it, because maybe you've been applying for credit and all the time you've been applying, like you keep getting rejected and you don't know the reason exactly why they're rejecting you. Well, when you start checking your credit report, you get to see exactly what people are reporting about you. You get to see it. And I think it's important to know what they're reporting about you, because when you know what they're reporting about you, you can basically, like I said, dispute and remove the things that are negative or bad on your credit report. Those reports make a difference. I know sometimes people give up and they're like, well, I don't want to do it. I'm tired. I just want to buy what I want to buy. I'll take the bad interest rate, because it's like you need to get it yesterday. But okay, even if you have to take a bad interest rate, take some time out for yourself and clean up those things. Take time out and clean it up, because once you clean it up and so forth, it'll be much easier for you to make those purchases that you want to purchase. Right. Banner says that there's 2 hour compounding. Right. Okay. Okay, what are you talking about? Like, compounding interest for what, the credit cards or the APR? Things that you owe with the if your payment history is bad? Again, I always tell people too that the longer you have, okay, if you check your credit report and you see that you have an account on there that basically shows that you were late or you didn't pay, remember that is 35% of your 100% credit profile. 35% of your credit profile is your payment history. And if you notice, so the payment history is 35%, how you use it is 30%, how long you've had the account is 15%, the mix of the different types, like whether it be a car loan, a mortgage, a regular loan, and some credit cards, that's the mix. That's only 10%. Okay? Right. They don't care. Basically, the bureaus or the lenders don't really care, exactly too much about what type of loans on it. What they care about at 35% is how you paid that loan. They care about 35% how you pay that money back to the people that loan you money. Then after they see how you pay the money back, they want to see how you use that card. My favorite number for credit, I always say if you have $1,000 and they advise you to just spend 30% utilization or utilize only 30%. At 30%, the 30% of 1,000 is just the $300. Okay? If you spend that much or stay under and you pay it off every month as you're supposed to, you have people that pay their credit report or pay their credit cards earlier than the due date. And why it's so important or why it's better that you pay it early than the due date is simply because you end up saving money on the interest. The longer you stretch it out, the longer you have those balances out, or the longer you pay the minimum, is the more money you end up spending. I've always said $1,000 credit card should not end up costing you $5,000 in credit later. And how is it going to cost you $5,000? Because you let it sit there for years, and you linger on paying the minimum. I talked about myths saying that, one of the myths that in credit is that if you have a balance out, that it helps build your credit. If you have a really big balance out, how is that beneficial to your credit? It's not beneficial because you're letting that debt or you're letting those payments linger on for too long. You're just basically showing the lender that you can't pay your bill back quick enough, or you're probably not intending to pay your bill back quick enough. I mean, they don't care because they're still making their interest on it. But the question is, why would you want to pay that much interest? Why would you want to do that? It doesn't really make any sense. There's no benefit for you in paying so much interest. So I would advise anyone or tell anyone that if you have any outstanding debts, try your best to pay it off. If it's a case where, let's say, God forbid, you default on a credit card or the loan and the lender has it, you could always call them back and make arrangements to pay, some of those bills off. Yes, you can. Because again, you don't want it to report to show that your credit history has been 30, 60, 90. I've seen 120, 180 days. You don't want that because it could be many years or many months after, and you're trying to buy something really good, and they look at it and they say, okay, well, you have an account on here 3 years ago, and it shows that you were 80 days late with this account, or I'm sorry, you were 90 days late with this account. Why? This has been what, 2, 3 years later? Does that even make any sense? And maybe it was you, and you just forgot. You literally forgot that account was on there. You've literally forgot to pay, or you didn't have a chance to pay. So this is a reason why you have to pull that credit report. And once you pull that credit report, this will allow you to see exactly what is being written about you or what's on there. Okay? You'll get to see exactly what's on the credit report, exactly what the bureaus are reporting, You're going to get to see what lenders see. Okay? So when you pull the credit report, please ensure that you're getting an accurate score. Please ensure that you're getting a score with it. Because if you're not getting the proper score, again, your history, if you have good payment history, it's not being properly reported. And there's been cases of that where people are paying and it's not being properly reported. Stuff happens. People make mistakes. Okay? People make mistakes. Companies make mistakes too, but you have to check and you have to ensure that those things are accurately being reported. Right. Bandler said you have to make the hour compounding. I guess we're talking about what compounding interest with the credit card companies. I'm not really sure. Right. You have to make it where it's compounding for you. Okay? Right. So people, with that said, thank you for joining me again. As I said, we're going to continue our series with credit. I'm going to be having an upcoming workshop, definitely talking about it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe. Like, comment, share this live, share this video, share other videos once you check out the channel, and so forth. I talk about other things other than credit. I talk about, self-motivation, talk about different ways to level up your money, talk about how to move in silence. For example, once you get your credit report up and you get your score up and, you're buying those properties and those cars, you move in silence. You ain't got to tell nobody exactly what you're doing. That is the wonderful thing about, guarding, our wealth and taking care of our credit. When we take care of our credit, it allows us to buy the things that we want. Yes, Manda, you're so welcome. I thank you so much for joining me. Does anybody else have any questions for me? Anybody have any questions about credit while we have a few more minutes? After doing all this talking, I get so thirsty all the time. Literally get so thirsty. All right, so I think I touched on everything that I wanted to. Made a note. I made a list of everything. I touched on, the errors that we have to look for. I touched on getting our 3 credit reports. Told you that you could get them from annualcreditreport.com. And I also told you that if you don't want to do it digitally, you can easily call TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And once you call them, they could give you your report. I told you that you needed to check. I had 4 things here that I made a list of that I wanted you to check. Told you to check your personal information, which is your name, your address, your employer. You need to look exactly what they're reporting about you. Please, if your name is John Smith, make sure that it's not saying John Jones. Okay? Make sure that they're not reporting somebody else's report on there. Okay? Right. Make sure that it's not being done. I also told you that you need to check if there's any collections on there. Check any collections. Check for bankruptcies. Check, public records. Check to see if there's any judgments. Right. Because again, those things that are on there, they stay for a couple years or they stay for up to 7 years. And they also, report negatively. So you're going to check those. But what I'm really concerned about is you checking if there's any collections on there, because that's the first part that we use to, clean everything up. Once you check for collections, the next part that I invite you to check for is your accounts. Look on the accounts. We're looking for balances. We're looking for if there's any wrong balances. Right. We're looking to see if there's any duplicate accounts. Okay. We're looking to see if there's any identity theft. Right. On the note of duplicate accounts, you do not want to have right. The banner says and more. You don't want to have duplicate accounts. You don't want to have 2 of the same accounts showing. For example, let's say you had an account that charged off. You don't want to have it being reported twice on your credit. You don't even want to report on your credit, period. But I'm saying, 2 hits is worse than just 1. Okay. So we check if there's any duplicate accounts. Right. You double check for identity theft. Please ensure that what's being reported is your actual name. That is not somebody else's name. All right. Make sure the balances that they're claiming that you owe is actually the balance that you owe. If let's say you had a card that you paid off, it's actually had a card that you paid off and you settled the debt. There's another thing to a lot of people like to settle their debts, but again, you have to do what's right for you and how it's going to benefit you in the long run. Because the thing is, many times when you settle debts, the lender ends up sending you a piece of paper that you file later with your taxes to show that you got something off the debt, because they consider whatever you settle for, they consider that as income. So if you end up settling anything, make sure that the balance that you settle for is the balance that's being reported on there. Okay? If you had a $2,000 debt that was settled for maybe $800, let's say they took $1,200 off the debt and you agreed and you settled and you paid it, you don't want them to be showing that you still owe the $2,000. That's what they're reporting. Now, before them showing that, after you decide to settle, that you should have gotten the paperwork. And that's another thing that I want to mention too. When you settle a debt, okay, or if you decide to go the route of settling a debt, please ensure that you're getting it in writing. Before you willy-nilly decide to give people your credit report, give them certain things, whatever, please ensure that you're getting it in writing, because you don't want a company to say, okay, listen, if you pay this debt off, if you owe the debt, we're going to give you something off, and then they don't give it to you. They just take your money. Or let's say, for example, you did a pay for delete. Let's say the debt was yours and you told the lender, you said, listen, okay, I'll pay the debt. I'll pay this much on the debt if you agree to delete the account from all 3 of the major credit bureaus. If you did that and you don't have it in writing that it's going to be done, okay, you've already paid. What can you do at this point? Then you're going to have to go back, do another round of disputing, another checking of your credit report, another round of accuracy. You're going to have to do all that again. Do you really want to go through that again when you could have just gotten it in writing? They used to always tell me when I was coming up that documentation beats communication. What does that simply mean? You got to put everything down on paper. You got to put it in writing so you know exactly what you're getting out of the deal. In other words, it's like a contract. It is a contract. The contract you're going to make with that lender is, okay, if I decide to pay this off, or I pay this amount, you're going to erase it off my report. Right. But again, you have to do your due diligence and you have to be able to negotiate and make a deal with the lender if the debt is in fact yours and you want to clear it off, or you want to find a way to clear it off. You decide if you want to settle it with them, or you decide if you want to do a pay for delete, whatever it is. You have to decide exactly what is better. Okay? And I also touched on the fact that you need to make sure that nobody's stealing your identity, nobody's using it. Right? Those things are so important. So many people have been victims of identity theft and they didn't even know that they were victims of identity theft. It was later when they tried to buy things and they found all these reports and all these accounts that were in their names. Absolutely had nothing to do with what was in their name. Okay? Didn't have anything to do with what was in their name. They just ended up basically taking the fall for somebody else. Okay? And the final thing that I mentioned, again, this is just a closing of everything. I talked about, the payment history being the biggest thing. Your payment history is so important. Your payment history is so essential. Okay? Doesn't matter if you find that, that you can't pay or you're having difficulty paying, call your lender. Tell them, listen, I need this. Many times lenders have programs where if you're having difficulty, they could allow you to maybe skip a payment, or they could put the payment back behind the account. It's called like a forbearance. All right. Call your lender, because you don't want 130-day or 160 or 190-day late to be put on the credit, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to pay for it. And I mean literally and figuratively. How do you pay for it literally? Well, it's like when you try to qualify for something else, you're going to get the worst rates. Figuratively, they're going to keep running your credit and they're going to basically give you the worst rate. So they're going to tell you that, listen, this isn't working. All right. So you have to basically ensure that your payment history is always up to par. Okay. Make sure that your payment history is accurate. I talked about utilization. I know that sometimes people, money run down and they got to spend more than they have to. What I always say is stay at the 30%. My big thing is maybe 60, maybe, I'm sorry, not 60, maybe, even 10%. If you end up spending over 30% and when the payment comes, right? Let's say, again, I always give you the example of 1,000. Let's say you have $1,000. At 30%, you spend 300. If you end up spending, 50%, or you end up spending $500 of that $1,000 card, what I would say is when the credit card company, when they send your statement or they bill you, and they'll say of the 500 that you spent that you should just pay the minimum. Maybe the minimum is what, $30. I'm just doing it. I don't know exactly what formula they used to do it, but whatever the minimum is. If it's me, I would literally pay more than the minimum. I'm paying more than the minimum. I'm not sitting out there and letting, that interest accrue on me, on my own account. I'm going to pay more. So if I spent 500 on it and they said my minimum payment is maybe $30 or whatever, 20 something dollars, you best believe I'm paying at least $100 of that. I'm sending something back. I'm definitely sending something back. Okay. Sending something more than what I owe on it, or more than they require me to pay. It doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day, it's too much interest that's being charged on that credit card. And I don't want to waste my time paying for something, or paying more than, than I could have if I had paid off my debt right in the first place. So it makes sense. All right. It totally makes sense. Please just be vigilant when you're getting credit cards. Please make sure that you apply to, the places, do some research when you get credit cards or you get any type of loan. Ensure that, that there's no extending fees. A lot of times when you get credit cards and so forth, you got to read the fine print. Some of these credit card companies, like, they charge you like an annual fee for having the credit card. When you're opening credit cards, you want to make sure that it's cards that don't have any annual fees. Or if you really need the credit card and you want to try to establish credit and it's an annual fee, please ensure that you're comfortable with the fee that the credit card company is charging. Okay? Please ensure that you're comfortable with the fee that they're charging per year. I've seen fees of $79.95. I've seen it where some of them break it up where they'll charge you like $9.99 a month for it. Right? There's so many different types of fees. So you want to ensure that you're getting the right fee, or you're getting a fee that you're not even the right fee, the fee that you're comfortable with paying. Okay? If you're comfortable with paying a certain fee, then hey, if you need a credit card, then you got to do what you have to do. And then once you build that credit history for a year, if you want to shop around and you want to see or apply for other credit, you apply for other credit. But as you're shopping for other credit, I wouldn't close the first card that I have. I'd probably call the lender and try to negotiate like a better interest rate, or even ask them to stop charging me that fee. I mean, there's many ways, but you have to be vigilant, and you have to basically, you have to research what product or what card is going to work better for you. You have to definitely do that. If you don't do that, you're not going to get the best product out there. So anyway, with that said, people, as I said, I thank you so much for joining me this evening. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. We're going to pick up our series again on credit and the different parts of credit and so forth. As I said, I would like to put a workshop together, basically talking more about how to clean up our credit. Maybe have people join. So that's a work in progress. All right. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. We're out. Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. You're so welcome. I really enjoy and I really enjoy having you on these lives and so forth. I have a question. Is there before I sign off, is there a topic that you would like me to specifically address with credit? Right, because I can definitely do that. I can definitely do another topic with credit for sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bandy, you said okay. You said you want me to talk about how to get business credit. Okay, sure. Sure, I'd be more than happy. So I'll do that. I know a lot about business credit also, believe it or not. Other gentleman that was on last night, he was very much interested in business credit and so forth. Okay, so I could definitely do a live on business credit, how to get funding, and different ways of how people end up getting business credit. Yes, I could definitely do that. All right. Yes, you're welcome. Good night. Take care. Bye bye.